My daughter screamed, "Pay your rent or get out," and I left without saying a word. She didn't know that I was the one who actually owned the house. I secretly sold it for $840,000 to a ruthless investment firm. When the eviction team showed up at the door, she called me in a panic, screaming that there had been a mistake, but my response stunned her into silence. I am Harold Foster, 71 years old, and for the last 5 years, I have lived as a guest in my own home. I watched my daughter Megan and her husband Travis turn the sanctuary I built with my late wife into a fortress of greed. But last week, everything changed. Before I tell you how I executed the ultimate revenge, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Comment below with the city you are watching from. I would love to know how far this story travels. The piece of paper slid across the oak dining table with a sound like a blade sharpening against a stone. It was a single sheet of printer paper, plain white, but the bold black text in the center hit me harder than a physical blow. Notice of rent adjustment. I stared at it. My reading glasses were perched on the end of my nose, and I had to blink twice to make sure my eyes were not deceiving me. The number was not $500 anymore. It was $1,500. I looked up. Megan sat across from me, her arms crossed over her chest, her face set in that hard, professional expression she used when she was firing people at her human resources job. She did not look like the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders. She looked like a stranger. Next to her sat Travis, my son-in-law. He was leaning back in his chair, one leg shaking nervously as it always did, drumming his fingers on the table. He was 35 years old, but he still dressed like a teenager in an oversized hoodie and expensive sneakers he definitely could not afford. Megan. What is this? I asked, my voice calm but tight. It is exactly what it looks like, Dad. Megan said, her voice devoid of any warmth. It is a market adjustment. Travis and I have been looking at the numbers. The cost of living has skyrocketed. Utilities are up. Property taxes are up. $500 does not cover anything anymore. We need $1,500 a month starting immediately. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. $1,500. My Social Security check was barely $1,800 a month. If I paid this, I would have $300 left for food, medicine, and gas. They knew this. They knew exactly how much I received every month, because I had never hidden anything from them. Megan, you know I cannot afford this, I said, trying to keep the tremor out of my hands. That is almost my entire pension. I bought the groceries last week. I paid for the repair on the water heater last month. I contribute. Travis snorted a derisive sound that made my jaw clench. Contribute, Travis said, rolling his eyes. Harold buying a few bags of apples and milk is not contributing to a mortgage in this economy. Do you have any idea what the square footage of this place is worth? If we rented your room out on the open market, we could get $2,000 easy. We are giving you the family discount. Family discount. The words tasted like bile. I looked around the dining room. I had built this extension myself 20 years ago. I had laid these floorboards with my own hands. My wife Beatrice had picked out this wallpaper. 5 years ago, when Beatrice passed away from cancer, I was lost. The silence in this big house was deafening. Megan and Travis had suggested they move in. They said it would be better for everyone. They said they were saving for their own place and could keep me company. I had agreed. I wanted to help them. I wanted my family close. I never legally transferred the deed to them, but I let them take over the master bedroom. I moved into the guest room down the hall. I let them play house. I let them believe they were in charge because I was grieving and I was tired. I made a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. This is not a negotiation, Dad, Megan cut in her tone sharp. We have financial goals. Travis is working on some big investments, and we need liquidity. We cannot carry you anymore. If you cannot pay the market rate, then you need to make other arrangements. Other arrangements, I repeated slowly. You are kicking me out. We are not kicking you out, Travis said, leaning forward and grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl, taking a loud, crunching bite. We are just saying pay up or get out. It is simple economics, Harold. Adapt or die. I looked at Travis. He had not held a steady job in 2 years. He spent his days staring at multiple computer monitors in what used to be my study, talking about cryptocurrencies and digital assets. He called himself an entrepreneur. I called him a parasite, but I never said it out loud. I kept the peace for Megan, always for Megan. Megan, look at me, I said. My voice dropped an octave, losing the pleading tone. I am your father. I built this house. Your mother and I paid off the mortgage 15 years ago. Megan slammed her hand on the table, making the silverware jump. Stop living in the past, Dad, she snapped. Mom is gone. This is our house now. She promised it to me. Just because you are too stubborn to sign the final paperwork does not mean it is not ours in spirit. We are the ones maintaining it. We are the ones living here. You are just a guest who has overstayed his welcome. The cruelty in her eyes was startling. It was not just greed. It was contempt. She looked at me and she saw a failure. She saw a wallet that had run dry. I have 3 days, Dad, Megan said, standing up. The first of the month is Friday. $1,500 or the guest room becomes Travis's new home gym. He needs the space for his virtual reality setup. She turned and walked into the kitchen, leaving the eviction notice sitting between us like a declaration of war. Travis winked at me, a smug, arrogant wink, before following her. I sat there for a long time. The silence of the house usually comforted me, but tonight it felt heavy. I thought about Beatrice. I thought about how much she loved Megan. I thought about how we saved every penny scrimping and sacrificing so Megan could go to a good college so she could have a debt-free start in life. We had created a monster. I stood up and walked to my room. It was the smallest room in the house. My engineering degree hung on the wall next to a picture of Beatrice and me in Paris. I sat on the edge of the twin bed and looked at my hands. They were calloused, worn hands. Hands that had worked for 40 years in civil engineering, building bridges and highways. I was not a weak man. I was not a senile old fool. But they treated me like one. The next morning, the atmosphere in the house shifted from tense to hostile. I walked into the kitchen to make coffee and found my favorite mug, the one Beatrice gave me for our 25th anniversary, gone. I looked in the dishwasher. Nothing. I looked in the cabinet. Nothing. Looking for this? Travis asked. I turned around. Travis was leaning against the counter holding my mug filled with some green sludge smoothie. That is my mug, Travis, I said, my voice low. It is just a cup, Harold, relax, Travis said, taking a sip. You are so attached to material things. That is why you are broke. You have a scarcity mindset. You need to detach. He put the mug down on the counter with a heavy thud right near the edge. By the way, Megan wants you to clear out the garage, he said. That old junk you have stored in there is taking up space. I have a treadmill coming next week. That junk is my library, I said. My engineering reference books, my first editions, my journals. Yeah, well, paper is obsolete, Travis said, waving a hand dismissively. Digitize it or dump it. You have until tonight. I went to the garage. It was my last sanctuary. The shelves lined the walls filled with leather-bound books and technical manuals. The smell of old paper and oil comforted me. But as I stepped inside, I froze. Megan was already there. She was holding a large black contractor bag. She was pulling books off the shelves and tossing them into the bag with a careless violence that made my stomach turn. What are you doing? I shouted, rushing forward. Cleaning, Megan said, without looking at me. She grabbed a vintage manual on suspension bridges, a book I had bought in London in 1982, and threw it into the abyss of the plastic bag. Stop it! I grabbed her wrist. My grip was stronger than she expected. She gasped and dropped the book. "Get your hands off me," she hissed, pulling away. "I am helping you, Dad. You cannot take all this crap to a nursing home or a studio apartment. You need to downsize. I am doing you a favor. You are throwing away my life." I said, my voice shaking not with fear, but with a rage I had not felt in years. "It is garbage, Dad," Megan screamed. "No one cares about bridge loads from 1980. It is trash. Just like that stupid car." She pointed to the corner of the garage. There, under a heavy canvas tarp, sat the 1969 Mustang. It was cherry red underneath the cover. Beatrice and I had restored it together. It was the car we drove on our honeymoon. It was not just a car, it was a time machine. It was the only thing I had left that still smelled like her perfume. "What about the car?" I asked, my voice deadly quiet. "Travis says we can get 20 grand for it," Megan said, smoothing her hair. "Maybe more, if we find the right buyer." "That would cover your rent for a year, Dad." "Think about it. You can't drive it anymore anyway. Your eyes are getting bad. It is sitting here rotting. We are going to list it on Saturday." "Over my dead body," I whispered. Megan laughed. A cold, sharp sound. "Do not be dramatic, Dad. It is an asset. And right now you are a liability. We need to balance the books. Selling that old heap is the only way you get to stay under this roof. So you have a choice, duh. The books go today. The car goes Saturday. Or you go shh." She kicked the bag of books toward me. "Finish this," she commanded. "I want these shelves clear by dinner. Travis needs to measure for the floor mats." She spun on her heel and marched back into the house, slamming the door so hard the tools on the wall rattled. I stood there in the garage. The smell of gasoline and dust filled my lungs. I looked at the black bag filled with my knowledge, my passion. I looked at the covered shape of the Mustang. They were going to strip me clean. They were going to take my money, my memories, my dignity, and then when I had nothing left, they would toss me aside like a used wrapper. I walked over to the trash bag. I reached in and pulled out the book she had thrown. I smoothed the cover. I placed it gently back on the shelf. Then I walked over to the Mustang. I peeled back the corner of the tarp. The chrome bumper gleamed in the dim light. I ran my finger over the cold metal. They thought I was trapped. They thought I was a helpless old man with no options dependent on their charity. They thought the house belonged to them in everything but name. They were wrong. I turned and walked back into the house. I did not go to the kitchen. I did not go to my bedroom. I went to the living room where Travis was playing a video game on the massive television they had bought with my credit card 3 months ago. He didn't even look up as I passed. "Hey, Harold, you get those books out yet?" He grunted, his eyes glued to the screen. I didn't answer. I walked to the old beige sofa in the corner, the one they hated, the one they said smelled like old people. I knelt down and reached underneath the frame. There was a small slit in the fabric of the dust cover underneath. I had made it years ago. My fingers brushed against the cool, smooth surface of a plastic folder. I pulled it out. It was a blue folder, nondescript, dusty. I stood up and tucked it under my arm. "What is that?" Travis asked, glancing over finally. "Your secret stash of dirty magazines." He laughed at his own joke. I looked at him. I looked at this man who contributed nothing, who took everything, who treated my home like a hotel and my daughter like a bank account. "It is just some old paperwork, Travis," I said. "Nothing you would understand." I walked to the hallway. Megan was coming out of the kitchen holding a glass of wine. It was 2 in the afternoon. "Did you finish the garage?" she asked, expecting obedience. I stopped. I looked at my daughter. I looked for a trace of the little girl who used to cry when she scraped her knee, who used to make me homemade Father's Day cards with macaroni. I looked for Beatrice's eyes in her face. I saw the physical resemblance, but the spirit was gone. Beatrice was kind. Beatrice was generous. Megan had become something else entirely. "I have a question for you, Megan," I said. She sighed dramatically, leaning against the wall. "What now, Dad?" "If I leave," I said slowly. "If I walk out that door right now and never come back. Is that what you want?" Megan swirled the wine in her glass. She did not hesitate. "I want us to have our lives back, Dad," she said. "I want my house to be my house. I want to stop feeling like I am babysitting. So if you can't pay the rent, then yes. I think it is time you moved on. It is for the best. You will be happier somewhere else. Somewhere with people your own age." She took a sip of wine. "And leave the car keys," she added. "We will sell it for you and send you the check. Minus the commission, of course." I stared at her for 5 long seconds, memorizing this moment, memorizing the indifference on her face. "Okay," I said. "Okay, what?" she asked, frowning. "Okay. I am leaving." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply turned and walked toward the front door. "Wait, where are you going?" Travis called out from the living room, sensing the shift in the air. "You didn't clean the garage, Harold." I opened the front door. The afternoon sun hit my face. It was a crisp, cool day. "I am done cleaning, Travis," I said. I stepped out onto the porch. "Dad?" "You can't just leave," Megan called out. Her voice tinged with annoyance, not concern. "You don't have anywhere to go. You will be back in an hour when you get hungry. Don't be dramatic." I did not turn back. I walked down the driveway. I did not take my car keys. I did not take my clothes. I did not take my toothbrush. I only had the clothes on my back, my wallet, and the blue folder tucked tightly under my arm. I walked to the end of the block. I did not look back at the 2-story colonial house with the white shutters and the oak tree I had planted when Megan was born. I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed a number I had not called in 5 years. "Mr. Blackwood," I said when the voice answered. Harold Foster, the deep voice on the other end, replied instantly. "It has been a long time. It is time to execute the protocol," I said. "I am coming to your office." "Everything is in order?" Mr. Blackwood asked. I looked down at the blue folder. "Yes," I said. "Sell it. Sell it all." I hailed a taxi at the corner. As I climbed into the back seat, I felt a strange sensation wash over me. It wasn't fear. It wasn't sadness. It was freedom. They thought they had won. They thought they had broken me. They were popping champagne right now, thinking the old man was gone, and the house was finally theirs to rule. They had no idea that the house they were standing in did not belong to them. It didn't even belong to me. Not technically. It belonged to the Beatrice Foster Revocable Trust, and I was the sole trustee. I watched the neighborhood pass by through the window. The taxi merged onto the highway heading toward the city skyline. Megan wanted market rates. She wanted economics. She wanted to treat family like a business transaction. Well, she was about to get the most painful lesson in economics of her life. I was going to sell the ground right from under their feet, and I was going to do it fast. I arrived at the glass and steel tower of Blackwood and Associates 40 minutes later. The receptionist looked at my attire: flannel shirt, old jeans, work boots, but she didn't say a word. She knew who I was. "Mr. Foster," she said, nodding. "Mr. Blackwood is waiting for you in conference room B." I walked into the room. Arthur Blackwood was sitting at the head of a long mahogany table. He was a shark of a lawyer, the kind of man who smiled with his teeth but got things done. "Harold," he said, standing up and shaking my hand. "You look like you have had a rough day." "You have no idea, Arthur," I said, sitting down and placing the blue folder on the table. I opened it. Inside were the original deeds, the trust documents, and the power of attorney papers that Megan and Travis didn't even know existed. "They think I am destitute, Arthur. They demanded rent. They tried to throw away my books. They tried to sell Beatrice's car. Arthur's face hardened. He had admired Beatrice. What are your instructions, Harold? He asked. I want to liquidate the asset, I said. The house. 142 Maple Drive. I want it sold immediately. Arthur raised an eyebrow. The market is hot, Harold, but a standard sale takes 30 to 60 days. Showings, inspections. No, I interrupted. No showings, no inspections, no for sale signs in the yard. I want a cash buyer, an investor, someone who buys as is. That usually means taking a hit on the price, Arthur warned. You could lose 10, maybe 15% of the value. I don't care about the price, I said, leaning forward. I care about speed. And I care about the terms. What terms? Arthur asked, taking out his notepad. I want to sell it to the most aggressive developer in the city, I said. And the sale must include a specific clause. Which is? That the property is sold, occupied, I said. That the current residents are unauthorized squatters without a lease, and that the new owner has full rights to immediate eviction. Arthur paused, his pen hovering over the paper. He looked at me over his glasses. A slow smile spread across his face. You want to unleash the wolves on them. I want them to understand what the real world looks like, Arthur, I said. Find me a buyer, today. Arthur picked up his phone. I know exactly who to call, he said. Have you heard of Apex Real Estate Holdings? I shook my head. They are sharks, Harold. They buy properties to bulldoze them and build high-density condos. Their head of acquisitions is a woman named Ms. Sterling. She eats nails for breakfast. If you sell to her, the house will be gone in a week. Call her, I said. Arthur dialed. He spoke in low, rapid tones. He mentioned the address, the square footage, the zoning. He mentioned the price. He hung up 2 minutes later. She is interested, he said. She is offering $840,000. Cash. Closing in 48 hours. But she wants to meet you. Now. Where? I asked. Here. She is 10 minutes away. I sat back in the leather chair. $840,000. It was less than the market value, which was closer to $1 million, but it was instant. It was a weapon. 10 minutes later, the door opened. A woman walked in who looked like she was carved out of ice and marble. She was tall, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car used to. Her hair was cut in a sharp bob. Her eyes were gray and calculating. Ms. Sterling, Arthur said. Mr. Foster, she said, not offering her hand, just nodding. I have the contract. We reviewed the trust documents digitally. You have the authority to sell. I do, I said. My team has scouted the location, she said, placing a folder on the table. It is a prime corner lot. We can fit 6 units on that land once the existing structure is demolished. Demolished, I felt a pang of sadness. The house Beatrice loved. But then I remembered Megan throwing the books. I remembered Travis laughing. The house was already gone. It died with Beatrice. What was left was just wood and drywall filled with rot. Yes, I said. Do whatever you want with it. There is one condition, Ms. Sterling said. Since we cannot inspect the interior, we are buying it with all contents. Anything left inside becomes property of Apex. I thought about my clothes, my toothbrush, my furniture. I thought about the Mustang in the garage. The car, I said. There is a classic car in the garage. It is included, Ms. Sterling said firmly. We don't negotiate line items on distressed sales, Mr. Foster. All or nothing. I hesitated. The Mustang. Then I realized something. If I tried to save the car, I would have to go back. I would have to argue. I would have to deal with them. Beatrice wouldn't want me to cling to a car while losing my soul. I took the pen Arthur offered. The car is yours, I said. Just promise me one thing. What is that? Ms. Sterling asked. When you kick them out, I said. Don't be gentle. Ms. Sterling smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "Mr. Foster," she said, "we are Apex. We don't know the meaning of the word gentle." I signed the paper. The ink flowed smooth and black. With a few strokes of the pen, I had just sold the roof over my daughter's head. "The wire transfer will hit the trust account on Thursday," Ms. Sterling said, taking the papers back. "My eviction team will be there Friday morning at 7 sharp. "Thank you," I said. She left the room as quickly as she had entered. Arthur looked at me. "It is done, Harold. You are a wealthy man. And a homeless one." "Not homeless," I said, standing up. "Liberated." Arthur handed me a credit card linked to the trust. "Go to the Ritz-Carlton," he said. "Get a suite. Buy some new clothes. Turn off your phone." I took the card. I stepped out of the office building into the bustling city street. It was evening now. The lights were coming on. I checked my phone. 15 missed calls from Megan. 7 text messages from Travis. "Dad, where are you? Stop acting like a child. Come home and cook dinner." I powered the phone down. I hailed a taxi. "To the Ritz-Carlton, please," I said to the driver. As the car pulled away, I looked at the dark screen of my phone. They were probably sitting at that dining table right now, eating takeout, complaining about me, wondering where their servant had gone. They had 3 days left. 3 days of ignorance. They thought they had given me an ultimatum. But I had just dropped a nuclear bomb, and the countdown had already begun. Arthur poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal glass and slid it across the mahogany desk toward me. The ice clinked softly, a sound of civilization that felt alien after the barbarism I had just endured in my own dining room. I took the glass. My hands were still shaking, not from age, but from the adrenaline of a man who had just severed his own limb to escape a trap. The whiskey burned on the way down, a welcome fire that cleared the fog of shock. I watched Arthur Blackwood open the blue folder. He handled the papers with reverence. These were not just legal documents to him, they were the final wishes of a dying woman he had respected deeply. He adjusted his spectacles and ran a finger down the first page of the deed. The silence in the office was heavy, broken only by the hum of the city 30 floors below and the rustle of paper. "You know what this is?" Harold Arthur said, looking up over the rim of his glasses. His voice was steady, a lawyer's voice trained to deliver hard truths. "It is the Beatrice Foster Revocable Trust," I said, feeling the weight of the name on my tongue. "Correct," Arthur said, leaning back in his leather chair. "And do you remember the specific terms we drafted 10 years ago when Beatrice first got sick? We wanted to protect the assets from medical bankruptcy. We wanted to ensure you were taken care of." I nodded. I remembered the fluorescent lights of the hospital cafeteria where we signed these papers. I remembered Beatrice's cold hand in mine. "Megan thinks she owns the house, Arthur," I said. "She keeps talking about promises. She keeps saying Beatrice left it to her." Arthur sighed, a sound of frustration at the ignorance of the entitled. "Megan is a contingent beneficiary." "Harold," he explained, tapping the document with his pen. "That means she inherits the assets of the trust only upon the death of the primary beneficiary. That is you. As long as you have a pulse, she has zero legal claim to that property. She does not own a single brick. She does not own a blade of grass. She is living there by your grace and your grace alone." "She tried to evict me, Arthur," I said, the words tasting like ash. "She printed out a rent increase notice. She gave me 3 days. She told me to sell Beatrice's Mustang to pay her." Arthur's face went cold. He closed the folder with a sharp snap. The professional distance evaporated, replaced by the anger of a friend. "She threatened the trustee," he said, his voice dropping lower. "She threatened the legal owner of the estate with eviction from his own property. That is not just ungrateful, Harold, that is dangerously stupid. She has absolutely no idea that this folder exists, does she? She thinks it is just old tax papers," I said. She never looked. She never asked. She just assumed that because Mom died, the house was hers, and I was just an occupant she could bully. Arthur stood up and walked to the window looking out over the skyline. "So what is the play, Harold?" he asked without turning around. "Do you want me to send a cease and desist? Do you want me to serve them with a legal reality check? I can draft a letter that will make her head spin. We can clarify the ownership structure and force them to sign a lease if they want to stay. We can put them in their place." I swirled the remaining whiskey in my glass. I thought about the letter. A letter was a warning. A letter was a slap on the wrist. A letter was what a father sent when he wanted to teach a lesson but keep the relationship. I didn't want to teach a lesson. I wanted to end the class. "No letters." "Arthur," I said. He turned around, raising an eyebrow. "No letters," he repeated. "Then what?" "Liquidation," I said. The word hung in the air, washer cold and final. "I want to sell the house, Arthur." Arthur paused. He looked at me, searching for hesitation, but he found none. "Harold, that house is the primary asset of the trust," he said, carefully returning to his lawyer mode. "It is valued at nearly $1 million in this market. If we list it properly, we could set you up for life. But listing takes time. You would need to stage it. You would need to get them out first." "I don't have time," I said, standing up and pacing the small rug in front of his desk. "I don't want to stage it. I don't want open houses. I don't want to argue with Megan about keeping the kitchen clean for potential buyers. I want to be done." I walked over to the desk and placed my hands flat on the polished wood, leaning in. "I want to sell it today, Arthur. I want to sell it as is. I want to sell it with the furniture inside. I want to sell it with the dirty dishes in the sink and the unmade beds. I want to sell it with them inside it." Arthur stared at me. He was processing the request, looking for the legal angles. "You want to sell an occupied property?" he said slowly. "That is a distressed sale, Harold. You are going to take a bloodbath on the price. No regular buyer will touch a house with hostile squatters. You will need a cash buyer, an investor. And they will smell blood in the water. They will lowball you. I don't care about the price," I snapped. Arthur flinched slightly. "I don't care if I lose $100,000. I continued, my voice rising. "I don't care if I lose $200,000. I want cash, and I want it fast. I want a contract signed before the sun goes down today. I want the title transferred before Megan realizes I am not coming back with the groceries." Arthur sat down slowly. He picked up his pen and tapped it against the desk rhythmically. "You realize what this means," he said softly. "If you sell the house occupied, the new owner will have the right to evict. And investors who buy occupied homes are not nice people, Harold. They are not going to send polite letters. They are going to come with sheriffs and dumpster crews. They will clear that house out like it is a disease." "Good," I said. "That is exactly what I want." I thought about the books Megan had thrown in the trash bag. I thought about the way Travis looked at me when he held my coffee mug. They had treated me like garbage. It was only fitting that they be treated like trespassers. Arthur took a deep breath. He looked at the blue folder, then back at me. "You are the trustee," he said. "You have the sole authority to manage the assets as you see fit. If you determine that the property is no longer serving the best interests of the trust, you have the power to liquidate." He opened a drawer and pulled out a fresh legal pad. "I need you to be sure, Harold," he said, writing the date at the top of the page. "Once I make this call, there is no undo button. The deed will transfer. The money will move. The house will be gone." "I am sure," I said. "I have never been more sure of anything." "Beatrice is gone, Arthur. That house isn't a home anymore. It is just wood and drywall and a nest of vipers. I want to cut the head off the snake." Arthur nodded. He respected decisiveness. He stopped tapping his pen. Okay, he said. If we are doing this, we are doing it the hard way. I know a firm. Apex Real Estate Holdings. They specialize in high-risk acquisitions. They buy divorce houses. They buy foreclosure houses. They buy houses with squatters. Call them, I said. They are aggressive, Harold Arthur warned, reaching for his phone. They are corporate raiders. Their head of acquisitions is a woman named Sterling. She doesn't have a heart, she has a calculator. If I tell her we have $1 million property in a prime school district, and we are willing to let it go for 80 cents on the dollar for a quick close, she will be here in 20 minutes. Make the call, I said. Tell her I accept a low price, but I have conditions. What conditions? Arthur asked, his thumb hovering over the dial button. Total buyout, I said. They take everything. I don't want to move a single box. And immediate possession. As soon as the wire hits, I want the property to be their problem. Arthur smiled, a grim, tight expression. You are going to unleash hell on your daughter, Harold. I sat back in the chair and took a sip of the whiskey. It tasted smooth and expensive. It tasted like power. She wanted to charge me market rates for a room in my own house, I said. I am just teaching her how the market really works. Arthur dialed the number. He put it on speaker. Ms. Sterling. Arthur said when the line connected. This is Arthur Blackwood. I have a client in my office. He has a property, prime location. He wants to liquidate immediately, cash only, 48-hour close. I listened to the voice on the other end. It was sharp, precise, and hungry. Address, the woman asked. Arthur gave it to her. Occupancy status, she asked. Complicated, Arthur said. Family members. No lease. Hostile. There was a pause on the line. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head, calculating the risk versus the reward. I can offer $840,000, she said. Sight unseen. As is. We handle the eviction. Arthur looked at me. It was a low offer. The house was worth nearly $1.1 million. But it was instant. It was a weapon. I nodded. We accept, Arthur said into the phone. When can you get here with the paperwork? I am already in the car, she said. I will be there in 15 minutes. Arthur hung up. He looked at me with a mixture of awe and fear. God help them, Harold, he whispered. I drained my glass. God has nothing to do with this, Arthur, I said. This is business. 15 minutes later, the glass doors of the conference room swung open. There was no knock. There was no hesitation. A woman stepped inside who seemed to suck the oxygen right out of the room. She was younger than I expected, perhaps in her early 40s, but her eyes were ancient and cold. She wore a charcoal suit that was tailored to within an inch of its life, and her heels clicked against the hardwood floor with a rhythm that sounded like a ticking clock. She didn't carry a purse, she carried a tablet and a thin leather folder. This was Ms. Sterling, the head of acquisitions for Apex Real Estate, and looking at her, I understood why Arthur had called her a shark. She didn't look like someone who sold homes. She looked like someone who liquidated territories. Arthur stood up, buttoning his jacket, a gesture of respect I rarely saw him give. Ms. Sterling, he said, thank you for coming so quickly. She didn't smile. She didn't offer her hand. She walked straight to the table and placed her tablet down, tapping the screen to bring up a satellite image of my house. Time is money, Arthur, she said, her voice a low husk that commanded attention. You said you have a distressed asset in a prime zone. Maple Drive. Corner lot. Zoning allows for multifamily density. I have run the prelims. It is a good dirt play. She finally looked at me. Her gaze was evaluating, not humanizing. She was looking at me the way a butcher looks at a side of beef determining where the best cuts were. "And you must be the owner," she said. "Mr. Foster." "I am," I said, remaining seated. I gripped my glass of whiskey a little tighter. "Arthur tells me you want out," she said, sliding into the chair opposite me. "He says you want a cash exit today. That usually means there is a problem. Structural foundation issues mold or legal encumbrances. Which one is it?" "None of the above," I said. "The house is solid. I built the addition myself. The roof is 5 years old. The problem isn't the building, Ms. Sterling. The problem is the parasites living inside it." She paused. A flicker of interest sparked in her gray eyes. "Occupants?" she asked. "My daughter and her husband," I said. "They have no lease. They pay no rent. They believe they own the place. And today they gave me an ultimatum to leave. So I am leaving. And I am taking the equity with me." Sterling leaned back, steepling her fingers. "Familial squatters," she said. "Those are the worst kind. They feel entitled. They get emotional. They damage property when they realize the free ride is over." She tapped her finger on the table. "This changes the risk profile, Mr. Foster. Evicting family members in this state can be messy. It requires sheriffs, locksmiths, and sometimes bad press. Apex prefers clean titles and empty keys." Arthur stepped in, his voice smooth and professional. "That is why the asking price is what it is, Ms. Sterling. We are not asking for the 1.2 million market value. We are asking for a quick close at a significant discount to account for the removal costs." She looked at Arthur, then back at me. She picked up her tablet and scrolled through some numbers. The silence stretched out thin and tight. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I needed this to happen. If she walked away, I would have to go back. I would have to fight Megan in court for months while living under the same roof. I couldn't do that. I needed the nuclear option. 840,000, she said abruptly. I blinked. It was a lot of money. It was more money than I had ever seen in one place. But it was also a third less than the house was worth. "That is a steep haircut," Arthur began, but I cut him off. "Done," I said. Sterling looked at me, surprised by the speed of my capitulation. "There are conditions," she added, her eyes narrowing. "Name them," I said. "We buy it as is," she said. "That means everything inside. Furniture, appliances, personal effects left behind. We don't do inventory. We don't do storage. Once I sign that paper and wire the money, everything behind that front door belongs to Apex. If your daughter has heirlooms inside, they are mine. If you have gold bars under the floorboards, they are mine. We are buying the shell and the contents. We will likely bring in a dumpster crew the same day we serve the eviction notice." I thought about the living room furniture. I thought about the dining table where Megan had slid that rent notice across to me. I thought about the kitchen where Travis drank my coffee. "Fine," I said. "Take it all. I only want one thing." "And what is that?" she asked, suspicious now. "I want you to be the one who tells them," I said. "I don't want to send a letter. I don't want to make a phone call. I want them to find out they are homeless when you show up to change the locks." A slow, terrifying smile spread across Ms. Sterling's face. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator recognizing a kindred spirit. "We can accommodate that," she said. "In fact, we prefer it. The element of surprise prevents them from stripping the copper wiring out of the walls before we get there." She reached into her leather folder and pulled out a thick stack of documents. She placed them on the table and uncapped a heavy, expensive pen. "This is a standard cash purchase agreement," she said. "It waives all inspections. It waives all contingencies. It acknowledges the presence of unauthorized occupants. It transfers the deed of the Beatrice Foster Revocable Trust to Apex Holdings LLC, effective upon receipt of funds." Arthur picked up the contract. He scanned it quickly, his lawyer eyes darting back and forth. He flipped pages, reading the fine print. The room was silent except for the rustle of pages. I watched the sun beginning to set outside the window, turning the sky a bruised purple. It was fitting. The sun was setting on my life as Harold the father and rising on something else entirely. "It looks standard," Harold Arthur said, finally looking up. "It is aggressive, but it is legal. The wire transfer is set for tomorrow morning. The deed records electronically immediately after. By noon tomorrow, you will be a stranger to that house." I reached for the pen. My hand hovered over the paper. I thought about Megan one last time. I thought about the little girl who used to hold my hand crossing the street. But then I remembered her voice from this afternoon. I remembered the way she looked at me like I was a piece of furniture she wanted to throw out. She had killed that little girl herself. I signed. Harold Jacob Foster, trustee. I signed again. And again. Each signature felt like cutting a cord. With each stroke of the pen, the weight on my chest grew lighter. I wasn't just selling a house. I was buying my dignity back. I was buying my future. Ms. Sterling took the papers back the moment I finished. She checked the signatures. She nodded once, satisfied. "The funds will be in your trust account by 10 a.m. tomorrow," she said, standing up. "My team will arrive at the property at 7 a.m. on Friday. That gives us 24 hours to file the emergency unlawful detainer based on the ownership transfer. We move fast, Mr. Foster." "Friday," I said. "That is 3 days from now." "Correct," she said. "Do you want to be there?" "No," I said. "I never want to see that street again." She snapped her folder shut. "Pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Foster. You have a ruthless streak." "I respect that." She turned and marched out of the room, the glass doors swinging shut behind her. The room felt empty without her intensity. Arthur looked at me. He poured another splash of whiskey into my glass. "You just made a deal with the devil, Harold," he said softly. I picked up the glass. "No, Arthur," I said. "I just hired the devil to do a job I didn't have the stomach for." I stood up. My knees cracked, but I felt strong. "I need to go shopping," I said. "If I am going to live at the Ritz, I need a suit that doesn't smell like old garage dust." Arthur handed me the black credit card connected to the trust. "Spend it," he said. "It is your money now. All of it. Megan isn't getting a dime of this, is she?" I looked at the door where Ms. Sterling had exited. "Megan wanted the house," I said. "She got the house. She just didn't read the fine print." I walked out of the office and into the elevator. As the numbers ticked down toward the lobby, I pulled my phone out of my pocket one last time. I turned it on just for a second. The screen lit up with notifications. Text messages from Travis. "Bring pizza when you come back. And don't forget the light beer." I stared at the message. The sheer audacity of it. The complete lack of awareness. He thought I was out getting him dinner. He thought I was his errand boy. I typed a single reply. "I am not coming back." Then I blocked the number. I blocked Megan's number. I blocked the house landline. I dropped the phone into the trash can in the lobby of the building. I walked out into the cool night air. I hailed a cab. To the mall, I told the driver. The expensive one. I sat back and watched the city lights blur. I was 71 years old. I was alone. I had just sold my family home to a corporate shark. And for the first time in 5 years, I smiled. A real, genuine smile. They had told me to get out. So I did. I sat on the edge of a king-sized bed that felt like sleeping on a cloud, wrapped in a plush white robe that smelled of lavender and expensive detergent. The room service waiter had just cleared away a dinner of filet mignon and truffle fries, leaving behind a half-empty bottle of Pinot Noir. From the 10th floor window of the Ritz-Carlton, the city lights looked like scattered diamonds on black velvet. It was quiet here, peaceful. But 3 miles away at 142 Maple Drive, there was no peace. There was a celebration. I opened my laptop and logged into Facebook. I had created a burner account months ago just to keep an eye on the neighborhood watch page, but tonight it served a different purpose. I navigated to Travis's profile. His privacy settings were practically non-existent, a testament to his arrogance. And there it was. A live stream posted 20 minutes ago. The caption read, "Only taking back our kingdom. Hashtag homeowner life. Hashtag renovation. Hashtag bye-bye boomer." I clicked play. The video was shaky, filmed in portrait mode. The background noise was a mix of aggressive hip-hop music and the clinking of bottles. The camera panned around my living room, or what used to be my living room. They had moved the furniture. My recliner, the leather one I had sat in to read the newspaper every Sunday for 15 years, was pushed out onto the patio, exposed to the damp night air. In its place, they had set up a folding table covered in pizza boxes, beer bottles, and a bottle of tequila. Travis's face filled the screen, flushed and sweating. He was wearing a backwards baseball cap. "What's up, guys?" he shouted over the music. "Big night tonight. The squatter is finally gone. We officially have the crib to ourselves. No more old man smell. No more early bedtimes. We are popping bottles." He swung the camera around to find Megan. She was standing in the kitchen holding a glass of wine. She looked stressed but triumphant. There was a frantic energy to her movements. "Say hi, babe," Travis yelled. Megan waved her smile tight. "We are finally doing it," she said, her voice tinny through the computer speakers. "We are finally making this place ours." I watched as Travis walked through the house, filming as he went. He kicked a box of my winter coats that was sitting by the front door, waiting to be thrown out. "Garbage day is tomorrow," he laughed. "This place needs a detox." Then he walked down the hallway. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew where he was going. He stopped in front of the guest room door. "My room. So check this out." Travis narrated, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "This is where the magic is gonna happen. We have been talking about this for months. I need a dedicated space for my VR setup and the home gym. But we had this wall here, right? This useless, non-load-bearing wall separating the guest room from the den." He pushed the door open. My bed was stripped. The mattress was leaned up against the wall. My clothes were gone, likely stuffed into trash bags. The room looked naked, vulnerable. Megan appeared in the doorway behind him. She was holding a sledgehammer. It was my sledgehammer, the one with the hickory handle I had bought 30 years ago to build the deck. "You ready to do this?" she asked. Travis laughed, a high-pitched sound of pure glee. "Born ready, babe." I watched in silence as my daughter, the woman I had taught to ride a bicycle, the woman whose scraped knees I had bandaged, hefted the heavy hammer. She didn't look like a property owner making a renovation. She looked like a vandal. She looked like someone trying to smash a memory she couldn't erase. "Do it!" Travis yelled. Megan swung. She didn't have good form, but she had anger. The head of the hammer smashed into the drywall with a sickening crunch. Dust puffed out into the air. A jagged hole appeared in the pale yellow paint Beatrice had chosen. "Yeah!" Travis screamed, cheering her on. "Tear it down! Open it up! Open concept, baby!" Megan swung again, and again. She was panting now, sweat matting her hair to her forehead. She was attacking the house. She was attacking me. With every blow, she was screaming something I couldn't quite make out over the music, but it sounded like a release of years of resentment. Travis took the hammer from her. "My turn," he said. He swung with reckless abandon. He smashed a hole near the electrical outlet. He smashed the baseboards. He wasn't remodeling, he was destroying. He was kicking a hole in the hull of a sinking ship and laughing about the splash. I realized then that they truly believed they had won. They thought my departure was a surrender. They thought the house was a prize they had captured in battle. In their minds, the deed didn't matter. The mortgage didn't matter. Possession was 9/10 of the law, and they possessed the keys. Travis turned the camera back to himself. Dust coated his face like war paint. "Stay tuned, guys," he said, winking. "Tomorrow we are hitting the tile store. We are putting in slate floors. We are getting a jacuzzi. We are living the dream. Peace." The video ended. I sat back in the hotel room. The silence was heavy. I took a sip of wine, but it tasted metallic. They were destroying the property. They were lowering the value of the asset I had just sold. Technically, I should be worried. Technically, I should call Arthur and tell him to stop the wire transfer. But then I remembered the contract. Sold as is. Mus. Sterling had bought the house and everything in it. That included the walls. That included the wiring. Megan and Travis weren't renovating their home. They were vandalizing corporate property. I closed the laptop. I didn't want to see any more. I didn't want to see them toast to their victory. Because it wasn't a victory. It was a funeral feast. They were celebrating on the edge of a cliff, and the ground had already crumbled beneath their feet. They were spending money they didn't have on a house they didn't own. They were knocking down walls in a building that was scheduled for demolition. I imagined the scene the next morning. They would wake up hungover in a house filled with drywall dust. They would feel powerful. They would probably call a contractor. They would probably go to the bank to apply for a home equity line of credit, thinking they could borrow against the house's value to pay for their jacuzzi. They would walk into the bank with their heads held high, and they would hit a brick wall so hard it would leave a mark. I poured the last of the wine into my glass. "Enjoy the party." "Megan," I whispered to the empty hotel room. "Break the walls. Tear up the carpet. Have your fun. Because the bill is coming due, and you can't pay it with entitlement." I turned off the light and lay back on the pillows. I thought I wouldn't be able to sleep. I thought the image of Megan swinging that hammer would haunt me. But as I closed my eyes, all I could think about was the look on Travis's face when Ms. Sterling showed up. It was going to be priceless. The notifications on my laptop pinged one more time. I glanced at it. Travis had posted a status update. Looking for a general contractor for a full remodel. Cash ready. DM me. Serious inquiries only. I laughed. A dry, rasping sound in the dark room. Cash ready. They didn't have cash. They didn't have credit. They didn't have a clue. They were dancing on the deck of the Titanic and complaining about the ice in their drinks. I pulled the duvet up to my chin. Let them dance, I thought. Let them dance until the music stops. Because the conductor just left the building, and he took the instruments with him. The morning sun hit the floor-to-ceiling windows of my suite at the Ritz-Carlton, waking me gently, unlike the jarring alarm clock I had used for 40 years to get to job sites before dawn. I stretched in the high thread count sheets, feeling a momentary disorientation before the reality of my new life washed over me. I was free. I ordered a pot of coffee and a basket of pastries from room service, and while I waited, I opened my laptop. I didn't need to guess what was happening at 142 Maple Drive. I knew my daughter and her husband. They lived their lives for an audience, and thanks to the lack of privacy settings on their social media profiles, I had a front row seat to their self-destruction. The feed was a stream of manic activity. Travis had posted at 3 a.m. a blurry photo of a bottle of expensive tequila and a caption that read, "Investing in ourselves. New beginnings require capital. Watch this space." It was the kind of vague hustler talk he used to mask his unemployment, but this time it had a dangerous edge. I scrolled down. There was a new update posted just an hour ago. It was a video titled Phase 1 Acquisition Mode. I clicked play. Travis was sitting in his car, which was parked in the driveway of my house. He looked tired, his eyes bloodshot from the night before, but he was vibrating with a nervous energy. He held up a thick envelope. "Booyah!" he shouted at the camera. "They said we couldn't do it. They said we needed a W-2. They said we needed a credit score. But when you have assets, baby, the world opens up. Just secured 50 bands in liquid cash to kickstart the renovation. Hard money loan. High interest. But who cares when you are sitting on a gold mine? We refinance in 30 days, pull the equity out, pay this off, and pocket the difference. It is literally free money." I took a sip of coffee, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. He had gone to a predatory lender. He had taken out a hard money loan, probably with a 20% interest rate, using the house as collateral. Or at least he had promised the house as collateral. Since he didn't have the deed, he likely signed a personal guarantee based on the lie that he was the owner. He was leveraging an asset he didn't own to borrow money he couldn't pay back. It was financial suicide, and he was celebrating it like a lottery win. The video cut to Megan. She was in the passenger seat wearing huge sunglasses and holding a Starbucks cup. "We are heading to the design district," she told the camera, her voice thick with entitlement. "We are not doing Home Depot. We are not doing IKEA. We are going to the places where they don't put price tags on the furniture. This house deserves the best, and frankly, so do I. I have lived in squalor for too long. It is time to upgrade." I watched the rest of their day unfold through a series of Instagram stories, each one a nail in their coffin. They went to a high-end tile showroom. Megan filmed herself walking through aisles of imported Italian marble, running her hands over slabs that cost more per square foot than my first car. She berated a salesperson on camera. The poor woman was trying to explain lead times and delivery schedules. "I don't care about your supply chain issues," Megan snapped, her voice echoing in the showroom. "We have cash. We want it today. If you can't deliver, I will find someone who can." "Do you know who we are? We are rehabilitating a landmark property." I almost laughed out loud. A landmark property. It was a 3-bedroom suburban colonial, not the Taj Mahal. But in their minds, they were developers. They were moguls. They bought the marble. I saw the receipt flash on the screen in a blink, and you will miss it moment. $12,000. Cash. They bought gold-plated fixtures for the bathroom. $4,000. They bought a smart refrigerator with a screen on the door that probably cost more than the food they would put inside it. They were burning through that $50,000 like it was paper kindling. They were buying the trappings of wealth without having the foundation. They were decorating a sinking ship. The next video was shot in the afternoon back at the house. A white van was pulled up on the lawn. Not in the driveway, on the lawn. My grass. The grass I had fertilized and mowed for decades. It was being crushed under the tires of a contractor's van. Travis was filming again. He walked up to a man in coveralls who was unloading tools. "Yo, boss," Travis said, zooming in on the man's face. "We need this wall gone by tonight. And I want the floors ripped up. We have the tile coming tomorrow. We are on a tight schedule." The contractor looked at him, weary and annoyed. "Sir, we need to check for load-bearing beams before we take out any more studs," the man said. "And we need to pull permits for the plumbing." "Permits?" Travis scoffed. "We don't need permits. This is my house. I authorize it. Just get it done. I am paying you extra for speed, not for bureaucracy. Chop chop." He snapped his fingers at the man. He actually snapped his fingers. I closed my eyes for a moment, remembering the respect I had always shown the tradesmen who worked on my home. I remembered offering them cold water and lunch. I remembered asking about their families. Travis treated them like NPCs in a video game, obstacles to be commanded or removed. I watched as they directed the crew to tear out the hardwood floors in the living room. Those floors were original red oak. Beatrice and I had refinished them on our 10th anniversary. We had spent a week on our hands and knees sanding and staining, laughing until our sides hurt. Now I watched on a screen as a stranger with a crowbar ripped them up, splintering the wood, tossing the planks into a pile like garbage. Megan stood in the background, directing the destruction, with a glass of champagne in her hand. Out with the old, in with the new, she cheered. It smelled like old man in here anyway. It hurt. I won't lie. It hurt to see the physical erasure of my history. But the pain was dull, distant. It was the pain of watching a fire burn itself out. I knew what was coming. I knew that every dollar they spent, every wall they smashed, every arrogant command they barked, was just adding zeros to the bill they would eventually have to pay. They were so confident. They were so sure that the house was theirs. They believed the narrative they had invented, that I had abandoned the property, that possession was ownership, that they had won. They didn't stop to think why I hadn't fought back. They didn't wonder why I hadn't called the police when they threw me out. They assumed it was weakness. They assumed I was a beaten dog. They didn't know I was the one holding the leash. I checked the time. It was 4 p.m. on Wednesday. The wire transfer from Apex had hit the trust account that morning. $840,000. It was sitting there, safe and untouchable. The deed had been recorded electronically at the county clerk's office at noon. Legally, the house now belonged to Apex Real Estate Holdings. Technically, Megan and Travis were currently vandalizing property that belonged to a multi-million-dollar corporation. They were destroying assets owned by Ms. Sterling. I imagined Ms. Sterling sitting in her glass office watching the same social media feed I was. I imagined her cold, gray eyes narrowing as she cataloged the damages. She wouldn't be angry. She would be calculating. Every piece of marble they bought was a fixture she would keep. Every wall they tore down saved her demolition crew the trouble. But the arrogance, the sheer entitlement, that would annoy her. Travis posted one last update before dinner. He was sitting on a stack of new drywall holding a receipt from a high-end electronics store. Just ordered the 85-inch 8K displays for the game room, he announced, and the full surround sound system. Delivery Friday morning. We are building the ultimate sanctuary, boys. No boomers allowed. This is the future. Friday morning. The eviction team was scheduled for Friday morning at 7. The TV delivery was scheduled for Friday morning. The collision was going to be spectacular. They had spent the entire $50,000 in less than 12 hours. I did the mental math. Between the materials, the labor, the down payments, and the rush fees, they were tapped out. They had leveraged their future to destroy their present. They had dug a hole so deep they couldn't even see the sky anymore, and they thought they were building a tower. I shut the laptop. I didn't need to see anymore. I ordered a steak for dinner. I poured a glass of wine. I sat by the window and watched the city lights come on one by one. They were feasting on a credit card that was about to be declined. They were remodeling a house that was already sold. They were screaming at workers who were tearing apart a building scheduled for demolition. It was the height of folly. It was a Greek tragedy written in drywall dust and arrogance. And I was the author. I slept soundly that night. The bed was soft, the room was quiet, and my conscience was clear. I had given them a house. I had given them a home. I had given them 5 years of support. They had chosen to trade it all for a fantasy. Now reality was coming to collect. And reality, I had learned, had a very steep interest rate. Thursday morning arrived with a deceptive calm. From my suite at the Ritz-Carlton, I watched the city wake up under a blanket of gray smog. I sipped my coffee, black and strong, feeling the kind of peace that only comes when you have completely severed a toxic limb. My phone, which I had turned back on solely to monitor the situation, silently buzzed. It was a notification from the county clerk's automated system. The deed transfer had been finalized. The property at 142 Maple Drive was now officially recorded as an asset of Apex Real Estate Holdings. The trap wasn't just set. It had been sprung. 3 miles away, the atmosphere would be very different. I knew Megan's schedule. I knew Travis's habits. By 10 in the morning, they would be sitting in the kitchen, surrounded by the dust of their demolition hung over from their premature celebration, waiting for the call that would make them rich. They were waiting for the approval of the massive refinance loan they had applied for yesterday. The loan that was supposed to pay off the predatory $50,000 hard money debt they had taken out just 24 hours ago. They believed banking was magic. They thought you could walk in, flash a smile, say the house was yours, and walk out with a check. They didn't understand title searches. They didn't understand that banks don't lend money on feelings. They lend money on collateral. And as of 9 a.m. this morning, Megan and Travis had absolutely zero collateral. I imagined the scene perfectly. The phone ringing, Travis grabbing it, his greedy hands shaking slightly. He would put it on speaker because he wanted Megan to hear the victory fanfare. But there would be no fanfare. On the other end of the line was a loan officer named Mr. Henderson. I knew him. He was a by-the-book man who had handled my accounts for 20 years. He would be looking at his screen confused. He would be looking at a loan application for a property that, according to his system, had just been sold to a corporate entity for cash. I could almost hear his voice, dry and professional, cutting through their living room. "Mrs. Foster, Mr. Miller, I am afraid we have a problem with your application." Megan would laugh nervously. "A problem? What kind of problem? We have excellent credit." "Well, maybe not excellent, but the house is worth $1 million. Mr. Henderson would sigh. "The problem is not your credit score, ma'am. The problem is the collateral. We ran the standard title search this morning. According to the county recorder, you are not the owners of the property at 142 Maple Drive." The silence in that kitchen must have been absolute. The kind of silence that happens right before a car crash. "What do you mean we are not the owners?" Megan would scream, her entitlement flaring up like a match. "My mother left me this house. My father lives here, or lived here. It is our house. I am looking at the deed right now," Mr. Henderson would say, his voice cooling. "The property was transferred yesterday. It is currently owned by Apex Real Estate Holdings. We cannot issue a mortgage on a property you do not own. In fact, attempting to do so constitutes fraud. We are denying the application and flagging this file. Have a good day." Click. The dial tone would sound like a death knell. Back in my hotel room, I poured another cup of coffee. I didn't need to be there to know what happened next. The realization would hit Travis first. Travis the entrepreneur. Travis the crypto genius. He would do the math instantly. They had borrowed $50,000 from a hard money lender. A lender who charged exorbitant interest and probably broke kneecaps for late payments. They had spent every dime of that money destroying the house. They had planned to pay it back with the bank loan. Now there was no bank loan. There was only a $50,000 debt due in 30 days and a pile of rubble. Panic is a funny thing. It makes people irrational. It makes them frantic. Megan would be the first to scream. She would start pacing the kitchen, kicking up clouds of drywall dust. "This is a mistake," she would yell. "It is a clerical error. Dad must have done something stupid. He must have messed up the paperwork. We have to find the deed." The deed. The magical piece of paper they thought would solve everything. They believed that if they physically held the deed, it would override the computers. They thought possession of paper equaled ownership of reality. "Where is it?" Travis would shout, his face turning purple. "Where does the old man keep his papers?" "In his office," Megan would scream back. "He keeps everything in the filing cabinet in his office." And then the horror would set in, because they didn't have an office anymore. I closed my eyes and pictured it. They would run down the hallway, slipping on the debris. They would turn the corner into the guest wing. They would stop in the doorway of what used to be my bedroom and study. Yesterday, it had been a sanctuary of books and drafting tables. Yesterday, it had been a quiet room with a beige wall separating it from the den. Today, it was a war zone. They had smashed the wall. They had swung sledgehammers with glee, laughing, as they destroyed the very structure of the house. In their frenzy to create an open-concept game room, they had buried everything. My desk was gone, overturned, and smashed under a pile of drywall and 2x4s. The filing cabinet where I used to keep the warranties and manuals was crushed under a beam they had recklessly torn down. They had literally destroyed the place where the answers were hidden. Of course, the deed wasn't there. The deed had been in the blue folder under the sofa, and now it was safe in a vault at Apex headquarters. But they didn't know that. No, they thought it was buried under the rubble they had created. I imagined Megan falling to her knees in the dust. She would be coughing, choking on the white powder coating her throat. She would start digging with her bare hands. Her manicured nails, the ones she spent so much money on, would break and bleed as she clawed at the broken drywall. "Help me," she would scream at Travis. "Help me find it." Travis would be paralyzed. He would be looking at the destruction, seeing it for the first time not as a renovation, but as a crime scene. He would see the $50,000 he owed reflected in every broken board. "This is your fault," he would yell back, his voice cracking. "You said the house was yours. You said it was a done deal. I borrowed that money based on your word, Megan." "My word," Megan would shriek, throwing a chunk of plaster at him. "You were the one who wanted the game room. You were the one who wanted to tear the wall down. Start digging, you idiot." They would be on their hands and knees like animals scavenging in a landfill. They would be tossing aside pieces of the life I had built. They would find torn pages of my engineering books, the ones they had thrown in the trash. They would find the shattered remains of my desk lamp. But they would not find the deed. They would dig for hours. They would sweat and bleed and scream. The dust would cake in their hair, and eyes turning them into ghosts. The beautiful Italian marble they had bought yesterday would be sitting in the driveway, a mocking monument to their hubris, while they clawed through trash inside. I checked my watch. It was noon. By now, they would be exhausted. They would be realizing that the paper wasn't there, and the doubt would start to creep in. The terrifying thought that maybe, just maybe, I hadn't just gone for a walk. That maybe I had actually done something. But their arrogance wouldn't let them believe it fully. Not yet. They would assume I was incompetent. They would assume I had lost it. They would try to call me. I picked up my phone and looked at the blocked call log. Sure enough. 20 calls from Megan in the last hour. 10 from Travis. They were desperate. They needed the old man to come back and fix it. They needed Daddy to tell them where the paper was so they could kick him out properly. I didn't answer. I didn't unlock the number. I let them simmer in the silence. They were trapped in a house they had destroyed, owing money they couldn't pay, searching for a document that didn't exist anymore. And the clock was ticking. Ms. Sterling's team was less than 20 hours away. I ordered lunch. A club sandwich and iced tea. I ate it by the window, watching the traffic below. I wondered if they would try to go to the courthouse. If they did, they would see the transfer. They would see the name Apex. But they were lazy. They were entitled. They wouldn't go to the courthouse. They would wait. They would wait for me to come home. They would convince themselves that I would walk through the door with pizza and an apology, and that I would fix the clerical error at the bank. They were counting on my weakness. They were banking on my love. But the bank was closed. I finished my sandwich. I felt a twinge of phantom pain, a ghost of the love I used to have for them. It was sad, really. It was a tragedy of their own making. If they had just been kind, if they had just been grateful, if they had asked instead of demanded, I would have given them everything. I would have left them the house in the will. I would have helped them. But they didn't want to wait. They wanted to harvest the crop before it was ripe, and they had salted the earth in the process. I took a nap that afternoon, the kind of deep, dreamless sleep that only comes to the righteous. When I woke up, the sun was setting again. One more night. Tomorrow morning, the hammer would fall. Not my sledgehammer. A legal hammer. And this time, I wouldn't be the one getting crushed. Friday morning broke with a sky the color of bruised iron. From my vantage point in the hotel suite, I imagined the silence that still draped over 142 Maple Drive. Inside the house, Megan and Travis were likely sleeping the deep, heavy sleep of the desperate and the hungover. They were lying on a mattress on the floor, surrounded by the wreckage of their own making, dreaming that when they woke up, the deed would magically appear in the rubble, or that I would walk through the door to fix everything. They were dreaming of a future that had been sold out from under them 3 days ago. At exactly 7 a.m., the silence was shattered, not by a bird song or a gentle alarm, but by the heavy thud of car doors closing in unison. Ms. Sterling did not arrive in a sedan. She arrived in a convoy. 3 matte black SUVs with tinted windows pulled up to the curb, blocking the driveway completely. They looked less like real estate agents and more like a tactical team preparing for a raid. Ms. Sterling stepped out of the lead vehicle. She had traded her boardroom suit for a long black trench coat and heavy boots. She looked at the house with the dispassionate gaze of an executioner. Behind her, 4 men in dark uniforms stepped out. They were not police, but they carried themselves with the same imposing weight. They were private security and asset protection. Ms. Sterling walked up the driveway, her heels crunching on the loose gravel. She did not hesitate. She did not look at the flower beds Beatrice had planted. She walked straight to the front door. She did not ring the doorbell. She did not knock. She reached into her bag and pulled out a heavy-duty construction stapler. Thwack! The sound was loud, sharp, and violent. Thwack, thwack, thwack. She affixed a sheet of bright neon red paper to the solid oak door. It was an eviction notice, but not the standard court-ordered kind that takes months to process. This was a notice of trespassing and immediate possession based on the unconditional sale contract. The noise woke the house. I could imagine the confusion inside. Travis stumbling out of bed, grabbing the nearest object to use as a weapon, likely a baseball bat, thinking it was a burglar, or maybe the hard money lenders coming to collect early. The front door flew open before Ms. Sterling could even step back. Travis stood there in his boxer shorts, his chest heaving, his eyes wild and bloodshot. He gripped an aluminum bat in white-knuckled hands. He looked small and pathetic against the backdrop of the black SUVs and the wall of security guards, who instantly stepped in front of Ms. Sterling, hands hovering near their belts. "Get the hell off my property!" Travis screamed, his voice cracking. "I have a weapon. This is private property." Ms. Sterling didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She looked at the bat. Then she looked at Travis's face with an expression of profound boredom. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice cutting through the morning air like a scalpel, "I suggest you lower that bat immediately unless you want to add assault with a deadly weapon to your list of current problems, which already includes criminal trespass and vandalism." Travis froze. The authority in her voice was absolute. He lowered the bat slightly, but kept his aggressive stance. "Who are you?" he demanded. "Where is Harold? Did he send you?" Ms. Sterling signaled to one of her men, who handed her a thick black binder. She opened it with a snap. "Harold Foster is currently enjoying his retirement," she said. "I am Ms. Sterling, representing Apex Real Estate Holdings, and as of Tuesday afternoon, we are the sole legal owners of this property. You are currently trespassing on corporate land." Megan appeared in the doorway behind Travis, wrapping a sheet around herself. Her hair was a mess of drywall dust and tangles. She looked at the red paper stapled to the door, then at the woman in the black coat. "What is going on?" she shrieked. "Who are these people, Travis?" "They say they own the house," Travis stammered, his bravado evaporating like mist. "They say Harold sold it." Megan laughed, a hysterical, high-pitched sound. "That is a lie," she spat, stepping onto the porch. "My father can't sell this house. It is my house. He promised it to me. He doesn't have the right." Ms. Sterling pulled a document from the binder and held it up. It was a copy of the deed transfer stamped with the official seal of the county recorder. It showed the transfer from the Beatrice Foster Revocable Trust to Apex. It showed my signature. It showed the date. "He had every right," Ms. Sterling corrected, her tone dropping to a dangerous chill. "He was the sole trustee. He sold the asset. The transaction is closed. The funds have cleared. This building belongs to Apex. And you two are unauthorized occupants with zero legal standing." Megan stared at the paper. Her eyes darted back and forth, trying to find a flaw, trying to find a lie. But the seal was real. The signature was mine. "He sold it," she whispered, the reality finally piercing her delusion. "He actually sold it." "Yes, he did," Ms. Sterling said. "And he sold it with a specific clause. Sold as is occupied. That means we bought the house and everything inside it, including the furniture, including the appliances, including the air you are currently breathing." She took a step forward, forcing Travis and Megan to retreat into the foyer. She looked past them at the devastation in the hallway. She saw the holes in the walls. She saw the ripped-up flooring. She saw the piles of debris. "I see you have been busy," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Usually we have to pay a demolition crew to start tearing the place apart. You have saved us some money. However, since you are not licensed contractors and you do not own the property, what you have done is technically felony vandalism of a commercial asset." Travis dropped the bat. It clattered loudly on the floor. His face went gray. He realized in that second the magnitude of his error. He had borrowed $50,000 against a house he didn't own. He had spent that money destroying a house he didn't own. And now the real owner was standing in his living room talking about felonies. "We were renovating," Travis mumbled. "We were improving the value." "You were destroying my investment," Ms. Sterling snapped. "But that is irrelevant now. We are bulldozing this structure next week." She checked her watch. "It is 7:15 a.m. You have 72 hours. 72 hours for what?" Megan asked, her voice trembling. "To leave," Ms. Sterling said. "By Monday morning at 8 a.m. this property will be secured by a chain-link fence. The utilities will be cut. The demolition crew arrives at noon. Anything living or dead left inside the perimeter will be removed with heavy machinery." "You can't do this." Megan screamed, tears finally spilling over. "This is illegal. You have to evict us. We have rights. We are tenants." Ms. Sterling smiled. It was the same terrifying smile she had given me in the lawyer's office. "You are not tenants," she said. "You have no lease. You pay no rent. You are family guests whose invitation has been revoked by the previous owner. And since the ownership has changed, you are now simply intruders. We could have the sheriff remove you right now for the damage you caused to the walls. But Mr. Foster asked us to be thorough, so I am giving you the weekend." She turned to her security team. "Post the perimeter," she ordered. "No trucks allowed in the driveway. They can leave with their personal effects. Clothes, toiletries, nothing else. No furniture, no electronics, no appliances. Those were included in the sale." "Wait," Travis shouted. "I just bought an 85-inch TV. It is in the box. I paid $3,000 for it." Ms. Sterling looked at him with zero sympathy. "Did you buy it with money secured by a fraudulent loan against this property, Mr. Miller?" Travis closed his mouth. He looked like he was going to be sick. "I thought so," Ms. Sterling said. "Consider it rent for the last 5 years." She turned back to Megan. "Your father left a message," she said. Megan looked up, hope flaring in her eyes for a brief second. "He said he hopes you enjoy the market adjustment." Ms. Sterling delivered the line with brutal precision. She turned on her heel and walked back to the SUV. The security guards remained standing like statues at the end of the driveway, arms crossed, watching. Megan and Travis were left standing in the open doorway of a house that was no longer theirs, staring at the red notice that marked the end of their world. Back in the hotel room, I watched the scene play out in my mind. I didn't need a camera to see it. I knew the players. I knew the script. The shark had arrived. The water was full of blood. And the feeding frenzy had just begun. I watched the blue and red lights strobe against the front of the house through the grainy feed of the doorbell camera app on my phone. I hadn't disconnected the service yet. It was my last window into the world I had left behind, and right now it was broadcasting a reality show that no network would dare to air. Megan had done exactly what I expected her to do. She had called the police. In her warped mind, the arrival of Ms. Sterling and the security team was the crime, not her 5 years of freeloading. She believed that if she screamed loud enough and cried hard enough, the law would take her side because she was a middle-class woman in a nice neighborhood and Ms. Sterling was the invader. She was wrong. 2 patrol cars were parked at the curb, their lights cutting through the gray morning gloom. A burly officer stood on the porch, holding the deed Ms. Sterling had provided. He was reading it with a frown, while Megan stood next to him, pointing a shaking finger at the private security guards. "Arrest them!" she shrieked, her voice distorting the microphone. "They are trespassing. They are threatening us. This is my father's house, and I am his heir. These people are fraudsters." The officer lowered the paper. He looked at Megan. He looked at the red notice stapled to the door. He looked at Ms. Sterling, who was standing by her SUV, checking her emails completely unbothered by the police presence. "Ma'am," the officer said, his voice heavy with patience, "I have run the title. I have checked the county records. This paperwork is legitimate. The transfer was recorded yesterday. This property belongs to Apex Real Estate Holdings." "No," Megan screamed, stomping her foot like a toddler. "That is impossible. My dad just went for a walk. He didn't sell anything. He can't sell it without telling me." "He can, and he did," the officer said firmly. "He is the sole trustee. He doesn't need your permission. And according to this contract, he sold it with immediate possession rights. Technically, ma'am, you are the one trespassing." Travis stepped forward, trying to puff out his chest, trying to summon some of that unearned confidence he usually wore like a suit of armor. "Officer, we have tenancy rights," Travis said, citing laws he clearly didn't understand. "You have to give us 30 days. You can't just throw us out." The officer shook his head. "There is no lease on file, son. The new owner has declared you unauthorized occupants. They are giving you 72 hours as a courtesy. If they wanted to, they could press charges for the damage you did to the interior walls." "I saw the hallway. That is destruction of property." He took a step closer to Megan, his hand resting on his belt. "Now here is how this is going to work. You are going to lower your voice. You are going to stop harassing the property owners. And you are going to use these 3 days to pack your things and leave. If you call 911 again with a false report, or if you try to physically obstruct these people, I will arrest you for disorderly conduct and filing a false police report. Do you understand me?" Megan gaped at him. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The weapon she always used, her tears, her victimhood, had jammed. The police weren't there to save her. They were there to enforce the reality she refused to accept. "We are leaving," the officer said, signaling his partner. "Do not make us come back." They got into their cruisers and drove away, leaving Megan and Travis standing on the porch, exposed and shivering. The silence that followed was heavy. The neighbors were watching. I could see the curtains twitching across the street. Mrs. Gable next door was openly standing on her lawn, arms crossed, drinking in the drama. But the silence didn't last long. Reviewing the footage later, I saw the exact moment the second wave of the storm hit. It was less than 20 minutes after the police left. A black sedan with tinted windows screeched to a halt in front of the driveway, blocking the path the police cars had just cleared. It wasn't a corporate car like Ms. Sterling's. It was a muscle car, aggressive and loud. Two men stepped out. One was short and thick, wearing a leather jacket despite the morning chill. The other was tall and lean with a face like a hatchet. These were not bankers. These were not real estate agents. These were the people Travis had borrowed $50,000 from. The hard money lenders. They track collateral. They monitor filings. They had likely seen the deed transfer alert pop up on their systems the same way I had. They saw their security for the loan vanish into the corporate maw of Apex Real Estate, and they had come to collect before the dust settled. Travis saw them, and I saw the color drain from his face on the camera feed. He looked like a ghost. He tried to back into the house, but Megan grabbed his arm. "Who are they?" she hissed. Before he could answer, the short man was up the driveway. He didn't respect the perimeter Ms. Sterling's guards had set. He walked right past them. The guards didn't stop him. They were paid to protect the property, not the squatters. "Travis," the man said, his voice deceptively friendly. "We got a notification this morning. Says the house is sold. Says title changed hands." Travis swallowed hard. "It is a mistake, Vinny. It is a clerical error. We are sorting it out." Vinny laughed. It was a dry, barking sound. "Clerical errors don't have stamp duties paid, Travis. The house is gone. That means my collateral is gone. That means my contract is in default. Clause 4, Section B. If the asset is sold, the loan is due immediately." He stepped onto the porch, invading Travis's personal space. "I want my 50 grand, Travis, plus the origination fee. 55,000. I want it now." "We spent it," Travis whispered. I leaned closer to my phone screen. I couldn't believe he actually said it. "You what?" Vinny asked, his voice dropping to a whisper that was scarier than a scream. "We spent it on materials," Travis said, his voice trembling. "On marble. On contractors. It is all inside." Vinny looked at the house. He looked at the red eviction notice on the door. He looked at Ms. Sterling, who was watching from her car with mild amusement. "You spent my money fixing up a house you don't own," Vinny asked slowly. "A house that just got sold to a developer who is going to bulldoze it." Travis nodded, tears streaming down his face. Vinny shook his head. He reached out and patted Travis on the cheek. It was a light tap, but it carried the threat of extreme violence. "You are a special kind of stupid, Travis. I don't care about the marble. I don't care about the house. You have 24 hours. If I don't have my money by tomorrow noon, I am going to sell your debt to people who don't use contracts. They use tire irons." He turned and walked back to his car. The sedan peeled away, leaving tire marks on the asphalt. Megan stood frozen. She looked at Travis. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, dawning horror. "You borrowed $50,000, she whispered. Travis wiped his face. "I did it for us, Megan. For the renovation." "You borrowed $50,000 from loan sharks," Megan screamed, her voice cracking. "And you told them the house was yours. You lied to them." "I didn't lie," Travis yelled back, finally snapping. "You told me the house was yours. You told me your dad was a pushover. You told me he would never leave. You said we had time. This is your fault, Megan. You and your entitlement. If you hadn't pushed him so hard, he wouldn't have sold it." Megan slapped him. It was a loud crack that echoed through the microphone. "Do not blame me for your failure," she shrieked. "You are a loser, Travis. You have always been a loser. You play pretend businessman with my father's money. You spent that loan on gold toilets and giant TVS because you have a small ego. And now you have killed us." I watched them tear each other apart. It was ugly. It was visceral. The neighbors were all outside now. Mrs. Gable had called her husband out to watch. They were witnessing the implosion of the image Megan had tried so hard to cultivate. The successful professional. The happy couple. It was all peeling away like cheap paint. Travis grabbed Megan by the shoulders and shook her. "Where's the money, Megan? You have savings, right? You have that secret account you told me about. Pay him off." "I spent it." Megan sobbed, pulling away. "I spent it on the wedding. I spent it on the car. I don't have $50,000. I don't have anything. We are broke, Travis. We are homeless, and we are broke, and we are going to die because you borrowed money from the mafia." They stood there in the wreckage of their life, gasping for air. The house behind them loomed large and silent, a fortress that had rejected them. The red notice on the door seemed to glow. I turned off the feed. I sat back on the hotel bed. My heart was racing, not with fear, but with the adrenaline of closure. I had wondered if they loved each other. I had wondered if beneath the greed there was a bond. Now I knew. Their marriage was a transaction. It was a partnership based on what they could extract from me. When the resources dried up, the partnership dissolved. They were alone. They were facing the consequences of their own actions without a buffer. And the worst part for them was that I was the only one who could save them. And they knew it. My phone, which had been silent since I blocked them, suddenly lit up. It wasn't a call. It was a voicemail notification from a blocked number. Megan had found a way to bypass the block, likely using a neighbor's phone. I stared at the notification. This was it. The plea. The beg. I picked up the phone and pressed play. The voicemail was short. It was just the sound of Megan crying. Not the fake, manipulative crying she used to get her way when she was a teenager, but the raw, ugly sobbing of a woman watching the walls close in. "Dad, please pick up. We are in trouble. Real trouble." I sat on the balcony of my hotel suite. The wind was picking up, smelling of rain. I looked at the phone in my hand. It rang again. A different number. Mrs. Gable from next door. Megan must have run across the lawn begging to use a phone. I answered. "Hello, Harold." Mrs. Gable's voice was tentative. "I have Megan here. She is in a state, Harold. She says it is an emergency." "Put her on Martha," I said. There was a fumbling sound, then heavy breathing. "Dad." Megan's voice was a shriek, a sob. "Dad, you have to stop this. You have to come back. That woman, Ms. Sterling, she is a monster. And Vinny was here. He said he is going to kill Travis." I took a sip of my iced water. The condensation was cold against my fingers. "I know, Megan," I said. "I saw." "You saw," she gasped. "You saw, and you didn't do anything." "I sold the house, Megan," I said, my voice steady as a metronome. "That is what I did. I solved the problem of my living arrangements just like you asked. You wanted me out. I am out. Stop playing games," she screamed. "Undo it. Call the lawyers. Cancel the sale. Tell them you were senile. Tell them you didn't know what you were signing. We can fix this. We can get the house back and take out a proper loan to pay Vinny." I closed my eyes. Even now, at the edge of the abyss, she was plotting. She wanted me to perjure myself. She wanted me to declare myself incompetent just to save her from her own greed. "It is a done deal, Megan," I said. "The money is in the bank. The deed is recorded. There is no going back. Apex owns the property. Then give us the money," she demanded. Her tone shifted instantly from pleading to commanding. The entitlement was hardwired into her DNA. "You got $800,000, Dad. I saw the papers. Give us half. We need $55,000 for Vinny, and we need money for a new place. Just wire it to my account. Right now. It is the least you can do after ruining our lives." I leaned back in the chair, looking at the gray clouds gathering over the city. "The least I can do," I repeated. Megan, do you remember why I moved into the guest room? What does that have to do with anything? She snapped. Do you remember? I asked again. Because Mom died, she said impatiently. Because you were lonely. No, I said. Because you and Travis had lost your apartment. Because you had maxed out your credit cards on that trip to Bali. Because you came to me crying saying you had nowhere to go. I moved into the guest room to give you space to get back on your feet. 5 years ago, Megan. You were supposed to stay for 6 months. So what? She yelled. We are family. You are supposed to help us. I did help you, I said. I paid the utilities. I bought the food. I fixed the roof. And how did you repay me? You tried to charge me rent. You threw my books in the trash. You tried to sell your mother's car. That was just... We were stressed, Dad, she stammered. We didn't mean it. Just give us the money and we will go. We will leave you alone. We will move to Florida. You will never have to see us again. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. You think this is about me wanting you to leave? I asked. Megan, you still don't understand. This isn't a negotiation. This is a reckoning. I stood up and walked to the edge of the balcony. Let me explain something to you about that house, I said. You kept saying it was yours. You kept saying Mom promised it to you. Beatrice never promised you that house, Megan. Beatrice was terrified of you getting that house. Silence on the other end. What are you talking about? Megan whispered. Your mother knew you, I said. She loved you, but she knew you. She knew you couldn't hold on to $1 if your life depended on it. She knew Travis was a leech. When she got sick, she made me promise. She made me set up the trust. The Beatrice Foster Revocable Trust. Do you know why it exists? To avoid taxes, Megan said uncertainly. To avoid you, I corrected. The trust was designed to protect the asset set from your creditors, from your bad decisions, from Travis's schemes. The house was never yours, Megan. It was never going to be yours until I died. And even then, Arthur Blackwood drafted the terms so that it would be sold and the proceeds put into a managed fund that would pay you a small allowance. Beatrice didn't want you to have a lump sum because she knew you would spend it on marble floors and vacations while you were drowning in debt. Liar, Megan hissed. Mom wouldn't do that. She did, I said. And she was right. Look at you. You thought you owned it for 3 days and you destroyed it. You borrowed money from criminals against a house you didn't own. You proved Beatrice right in the most spectacular way possible. I don't care about the trust, Megan screamed, her voice shredding. I don't care about Mom's wishes. I care about the fact that a man with a tire iron is coming back tomorrow at noon. I care about the fact that I am on the street. You have $840,000, Dad. You are rich. Are you really going to let your daughter get hurt over money? Are you that cold? I looked at the city below. The cars looked like toys. I am not cold, Megan, I said. I am practical. And you are mistaken about something. What? She asked. I don't have $840,000. The silence stretched. I could hear Travis in the background asking what I said. What do you mean? Megan asked, her voice trembling. Ms. Sterling said she wired it. I saw the contract. She did wire it, I said. It went into the trust account yesterday morning. So transfer it, Megan yelled. I can't, I said. It is gone. Gone, she whispered. How can it be gone? It has been 24 hours. Did you gamble it? Did you buy a new house? No, I said. I bought insurance. Insurance against what? Against you, I said. I took a deep breath. This was the final blow, the one that would sever the cord forever. I sat down with Arthur yesterday afternoon, I said. We looked at the sum. $840,000. It is a lot of money. but it is not infinite. And I knew that if it was sitting in a bank account, you would never stop coming for it. You would sue me. You would beg. You would send Travis to guilt trip me. You would use your future children as leverage. You would drain me dry, Megan, just like you drained your mother. So I moved it. I continued. I purchased a single premium immediate annuity. Do you know what that is, Megan? No, she said. Her voice was small, terrified. It means I gave the insurance company the entire lump sum, I said. All of it, every penny. In exchange, they guarantee me a monthly income for the rest of my life. It is a pension, Megan. A travel fund. I paused to let it sink in. I get $4,500 a month, I said, for as long as I live. It is enough to stay in nice hotels. It is enough to see Europe. It is enough to eat well. But there is no principal, Megan. There is no pile of cash to withdraw. I cannot touch the lump sum. It belongs to the insurance company now. I cannot give you $50,000 because I don't have it. I cannot bail you out because the money is locked away in a vault that opens once a month for me and me alone. You gave it away, she screamed. You gave our inheritance to an insurance company. I bought my freedom, I said. And here is the kicker, Megan. The annuity has no beneficiary. If I die tomorrow, the payments stop. The money stays with the company. There is no inheritance. There is nothing for you to wait for. There is nothing for Travis to plot about. You are cut off. Completely. Permanently. Irrevocably. I heard a sound then. It was the sound of a phone hitting the floor. Then I heard Travis's voice in the distance, muffled and panicked. What did he say, Megan? What about the money? Then Megan's voice, closer again, picking up the phone. She wasn't screaming anymore. She sounded hollow, broken. You really hate me, she whispered. You hate me that much. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. It was hot and angry. I loved you enough to let you live in my house for 5 years, rent-free, I said. I loved you enough to clear out my garage for you. I loved you enough to sleep in a twin bed while you slept in my master suite. But you didn't want love, Megan. You wanted a servant. You wanted a banker. And when the servant tried to retire, you tried to fire him. You are going to let Vinny kill us, she said. Vinny is a businessman, I said. He doesn't want to go to jail for murder. He wants his money. You have cars. You have jewelry. You have that engagement ring Travis bought you, which I know cost $10,000 because I paid the credit card bill that month. Sell it. Sell everything. Work. Get 2 jobs. Figure it out. But Dad... No, I said, cutting her off. Do not call me Dad. Not right now. A father raises a child to be an adult. I failed at that. I raised a parasite. I am correcting my mistake. I looked at my watch. Ms. Sterling's team has the perimeter secure, I said. You have 48 hours left to get your clothes out. I suggest you start packing. And Megan, take the books out of the trash. I want those. Mrs. Sterling promised to keep them safe for me. Dad. Please. Goodbye, Megan. I hung up. I stared at the phone. My hand was shaking violently. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was exhaustion. It was the deep, bone-weary fatigue of a surgeon who has just amputated a gangrenous leg. It was gone. The infection was gone. But a part of me was gone too. I sat there for a long time as the rain began to fall over the city. I thought about the annuity. It was true. I had signed the papers with Arthur right after Ms. Sterling left. It was an ironclad contract. I had traded a fortune for a stipend. I had burned the capital to ensure my own safety. They couldn't touch me now. They couldn't sue me for money I didn't have. They couldn't wait for me to die. I was worth more to them alive than dead now, because as long as I was alive, there was a tiny sliver of hope that I might share my monthly check. But they knew I wouldn't. Not after this. I poured a glass of water. My throat was dry. The doorbell of the suite rang. I walked over and opened it. A bellboy stood there holding a garment bag. "Your new suit, sir," he said. "Mr. Blackwood sent it over." "Thank you," I said, taking the bag. I hung it in the closet. It was a charcoal gray Italian wool suit. It was the kind of suit a man wore when he was starting a new life. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked old. My eyes were tired, but my back was straight. I had done it. I had faced the monster in my own kitchen, and I had won. But the victory was quiet. It was lonely. I thought about Travis. I thought about Vinny. Travis was a coward, but he was slippery. He would find a way. He would sell Megan's things. He would beg his own parents. He would probably declare bankruptcy. It would be ugly. It would be painful. But they would survive. They had to. Because if they didn't, they would never learn. And I needed them to learn. I needed them to understand that the world doesn't owe them a living. That fathers are not infinite resources. That respect is the currency you use to pay for love, and they were bankrupt. I went back to the balcony. The rain was washing the city clean. I wondered where I would go first. Paris, Rome, Tokyo. The names on the map used to be just dreams Beatrice and I talked about. Now they were destinations. I would go for both of us. I picked up the phone one last time. I dialed Arthur's number. "It is done," I said when he answered. "How did she take it?" Arthur asked. "She knows," I said. "She knows the money is gone." "Good," Arthur said. "Now go to the airport, Harold. Get out of this city. Let the dust settle from a distance." "I will," I said. "One more thing, Harold." "Yes." Ms. Sterling called. She said the neighbors are reporting a lot of yelling coming from the house. She has doubled the security detail. She wants you to know your books are safe. She put them in her car personally. I smiled. A shark with a soft spot for literature. "Tell her thank you," I said. I hung up. I packed my small bag. I put on the new suit. I looked at the room one last time. It was time to go. The eviction was in motion. The money was locked. The lesson was delivered. My daughter had screamed, "Pay rent or get out." I had paid the ultimate rent. I had paid with my past. And now I was getting out. Monday morning arrived with a relentless gray drizzle that soaked the city in misery. I wasn't there physically, but I felt the shift in the air at exactly 8 a.m. The 72-hour grace period had expired. The courtesy window was closed. Apex Real Estate Holdings did not believe in snooze buttons. I watched the final act through the doorbell camera on my phone. The feed was grainy, obscured by raindrops on the lens, but the picture was clear enough. Ms. Sterling's team moved with the efficiency of a swarm of locusts. They didn't pack boxes. They didn't wrap china in bubble wrap. They didn't organize piles by category. They simply cleared the structure. The front door stood wide open like a gaping wound. I watched as the contents of the house were disgorged onto the wet pavement. It wasn't a move. It was an expulsion. First came the clothes. Armfuls of Megan's designer coats and Travis's streetwear were dumped unceremoniously onto the lawn. They didn't use bags. They just threw them. Silk and wool instantly began to darken with rainwater. Then came the trophies of their greed. I saw the 85-inch television box, still sealed, dragged across the porch and shoved down the stairs. It landed with a heavy, wet thud in a mud puddle. $3,000 of borrowed money soaking up rainwater like a giant cardboard sponge. The warranty was void before the plastic was even cut. Next came the Italian marble tiles. They were heavy. The workers didn't carry them gently. They stacked them haphazardly on the uneven grass. I heard the crack of stone even through the low-fidelity audio. The weight was too much for the soft earth. and the stack toppled, sliding into a ditch. $12,000 of stone turned into expensive gravel in seconds. Megan was running back and forth on the lawn, screaming at the workers trying to cover her shoes with a garbage bag, trying to pull the TV out of the mud. She looked frantic. She looked small. She was yelling about lawsuits and property damage, but the workers ignored her. They were paid to clear the space, not to listen to the complaints of trespassers. And then Travis emerged. He wasn't carrying furniture. He wasn't helping Megan with the heavy items. He wasn't trying to save their marriage bed or their wedding album. He was carrying a single duffel bag and his gaming laptop clutched to his chest like a life preserver. He was wearing a hoodie pulled low over his face. He looked like a rat abandoning a ship he had personally chewed a hole in. He walked straight past Megan. He walked straight past the ruined TV. He headed for his car. Megan saw him. She stopped screaming at the workers and ran toward him, grabbing his arm. "Where are you going?" she shrieked, her voice raw from days of crying. "Travis, help me. We have to move this stuff. We have to call a storage unit." Travis shook her off. He didn't even look her in the eye. "There is no we, Megan," he shouted over the sound of the rain. "Vinny called me an hour ago. He knows I don't have the money. He knows the house is gone. I am not staying here to get my legs broken over your daddy issues." "You can't leave me," Megan cried, clinging to his sleeve. "I am your wife. We are in this together. You spent the money too." "I spent it because you said you were rich," Travis spat back, pushing her away hard enough that she stumbled into the wet grass. "You lied, Megan. You said the old man was a pushover. You said we were set for life. You are broke. You are toxic. And you are on your own." He opened the car door and threw his bag inside. "I am going to my mom's," he said. "Don't call me. And don't tell Vinny where I am." "Travis." "Wait!" Megan screamed. The engine roared to life. He backed out of the driveway, narrowly missing a stack of dining room chairs that had just been tossed onto the curb. He didn't look back. He peeled away, tires spinning on the wet asphalt, speeding away from the debt, away from the eviction, away from the woman he had promised to love, for richer or for poorer. Apparently, poorer was a deal-breaker. Megan stood alone in the driveway. The rain plastered her hair to her face. She watched the taillights of her husband's car disappear around the corner. She looked at the house where the windows were already being boarded up by a second crew. She looked at the pile of garbage that used to be her life. She sank to her knees in the mud. She was surrounded by wet designer clothes and broken dreams. The debt collectors were coming. Her husband was gone. Her father had vanished. She was the queen of a kingdom of rubble. And for the first time in her life, there was no one left to blame but herself. A sleek black town car glided through the downpour, cutting a path through the muddy water pooling in the gutters. It was quiet inside the cabin, insulated from the storm by double-paned glass and heavy steel. I sat in the back seat, adjusting the cuffs of my new charcoal suit. Next to me sat Eleanor, a woman I had met in the hotel lounge the night before. She was a retired architect with a sharp wit and a desire to see the world, and she had agreed to share a ride to the airport. She didn't know the full story of the woman kneeling in the mud outside, but she knew enough to stay silent and offer a supportive squeeze of my hand. The car slowed to a halt in front of the pile of sodden debris that marked the boundary of my former life. Through the tinted glass, I saw her. Megan was huddled on the curb, shivering violently. Her expensive clothes ruined her hair plastered to her skull. She looked up as the car idled. Hope is a dangerous thing. I saw it ignite in her eyes. She scrambled to her feet, slipping in the mud, rushing toward the car. She thought I had come back. She thought the ATM had returned to dispense one last bailout. She pounded on the glass. "Dad," she screamed, her voice muffled by the storm. "Dad, let me in. It is freezing. Travis left me. I have nothing." I looked at the driver. "Lower the window 3 inches," I said. The glass slid down with a soft electric hum. The smell of rain and ozone filled the car, mixed with the scent of Megan's desperation. She reached her fingers through the gap, trying to grasp the lock, trying to force her way into my sanctuary. "Open the door, Dad," she cried. "We can go to a hotel. We can fix this." I did not unlock the door. Instead, I reached into my inside jacket pocket and pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope. It was sealed with a single strip of tape. I pushed it through the crack in the window into her freezing, wet hands. "What is this?" she asked, looking at it confused. "Is it a check? Is it money?" "It is an invoice, Megan," I said, my voice calm and final. "An invoice," she stammered. "You wanted to charge me rent," I said. "You set the market rate, $1,500 a month. You said it was fair economics. You said I had to pay my way." She stared at me, water dripping from her nose onto the envelope. "I sat down with my accountant this morning," I continued. "We ran the numbers. You and Travis lived in my house for 60 months. You paid $0 in rent. You paid $0 in utilities. You ate my food. You used my water. You burned my electricity." I leaned closer to the gap in the glass. "If $1,500 is the fair market rate for a single room, Megan, then the rate for the master suite and full house privileges must be at least that much." So I did the math. $1,500 a month times 60 months. That is $90,000 in back rent you owe me. She gasped, clutching the envelope to her chest, as if it burned her. $90,000, she whispered. "I added interest," I said. "A modest 3%. It is all itemized in there. Consider this my final bill. I have already deducted it from your inheritance, which, as you know, is now 0. We are square, Megan. The ledger is balanced." "Dad, please," she sobbed, the fight draining out of her. "I have nowhere to go. I am your daughter." "And I was your father," I said. "But you fired me. You wanted a landlord. Now you have one. And you wanted a market correction. This is it." I looked at her one last time. I looked for the guilt I used to feel, the old reflex to save her, to shield her from the rain. It wasn't there. There was only a quiet sense of closure. "Goodbye, Megan," I said. I pressed the button. The window rolled up, sealing out the rain, sealing out the screams, sealing out the past. Megan pounded on the glass one last time, her face distorted by grief and shock, but the sound was distant now. "Driver," I said, "take us to the international terminal." The car pulled away smoothly, its tires hissing on the wet pavement. I didn't look back at the rearview mirror. I didn't need to see her standing there holding a bill she could never pay. The house was gone. The family was gone. The burden was gone. Eleanor turned to me. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I adjusted my tie. I looked at the road ahead, stretching out toward the horizon, toward airplanes and oceans and cities I had yet to walk. "I am better than okay," I said, taking a deep breath of the filtered air. "I am solvent." I thought about the lesson I had just delivered. It was harsh, yes. It was brutal. But it was the only inheritance worth giving. I had taught her that entitlement is a loan with a high interest rate, and eventually the bill comes due. I had taught her that you cannot build a life on the foundation of someone else's sacrifice without eventually paying the price. She was standing in the rain, but for the first time in her life she was standing on her own 2 feet. Whether she sank or swam was no longer my department. I turned to Eleanor and smiled. So I asked, "Paris or Tokyo?" She laughed, a bright sound that erased the memory of the storm. "Why not both?" she said. "Why not indeed?" I replied. The car accelerated, merging onto the highway, leaving the suburbs behind, leaving the wreckage behind, speeding toward a future that finally, for the first time in 71 years, belonged entirely to me. I learned that love without boundaries is just an invitation for abuse. For years, I thought providing for my daughter was my duty, but I was actually robbing her of the chance to grow up. True family isn't built on transactions or inheritance. It's built on mutual respect. By selling that house, I didn't just reclaim my assets. I reclaimed my dignity. To anyone watching who feels trapped by the expectations of others, remember you are not a resource to be mined. You are a person, and it is never ever too late to rewrite your own ending. If you enjoyed this story of justice and freedom, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life dramas. Share your thoughts in the comments. Would you have given Megan a second chance? I'll be reading.